The last thing I wanted to hear was my brother's condescending voice echoing through the marble lobby of Wheeler Industries. But there it was, loud and clear, as I wheeled my carry-on through the glass doors. Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. Justin's designer shoes clicked against the floor as he approached. Done playing translator in Europe? I'm Lana, and after 5 years of building a successful career in international business communications, I was back in Chicago because our father had practically begged me to return. The company was struggling, he'd said. We need all hands on deck, he'd insisted. I was managing multinational accounts, Justin. Not playing. I kept my voice level. Professional. The lobby security guard pretended not to watch our exchange. Justin straightened his tie, a nervous tic he'd had since we were kids. Right, because that's totally the same as running a Fortune 500 company. Before I could respond, a familiar voice called out. There's my girl! Mom rushed forward, wrapping me in a perfume-scented hug. Her smile was genuine, but tight around the edges. Your father's waiting upstairs. Board meeting in 20 minutes. I just landed, I protested, but Mom was already steering me toward the elevators. Time waits for no one, especially not in this building. She shot Justin a pointed look. Your brother was supposed to have the quarterly reports ready 2 days ago. Justin's face reddened. I told you, there were complications with the... Save it for the meeting, Mom cut him off, surprising me. She'd always been Justin's biggest defender. The elevator ride was tense. Justin jabbed at his phone while Mom fussed with my wrinkled blazer. 22 floors of awkward silence. Dad's corner office hadn't changed. Same mahogany desk, same Chicago skyline view. He stood when we entered, arms open. There she is. His hug was brief, businesslike. Ready to see how the big leagues operate? I've been in the big leagues, Dad. Just different ones. The words slipped out before I could stop them. He waved them away. Well, now you're home where you belong. Justin will show you the ropes. My brother smirked. Happy to babysit. Actually, I pulled out my tablet. I've already reviewed last quarter's numbers. We're hemorrhaging clients in the Asian markets. Our communication protocols are outdated, and our international presence is... That's enough. Dad's voice turned sharp. Justin handles strategy. You're here to support his vision. I bit my tongue, but the familiar sting of dismissal burned in my chest. Same old dynamic. Golden boy versus the spare. Meeting time, Mum announced, ever the peacekeeper. As we filed toward the conference room, I hung back to check a text from my friend Veronica. That's when I heard it. Justin's voice, harsh and low, coming from the supply closet. Everything's proceeding as planned. Yes, I understand the timeline. The old man doesn't suspect a thing. I pressed against the wall, heart pounding. The transfer will happen next week. No, my sister won't be a problem. She's just here to make Daddy happy. Trust me, by this time next month, Wheeler Industries will be ours. The door handle clicked. I hurried toward the conference room, mind racing. What transfer? Who was ours? Inside, board members were already seated. Justin slipped in moments later, all polished smiles and confident swagger. Now that we're all here, Dad began, I'd like to address the company's current challenges. Justin, the floor is yours. My brother stood, straightening his tie again. Thank you, Father. Despite some temporary setbacks, I'm confident our new direction will restore Wheeler Industries to its former glory. I watched him closely, noting the slight tremor in his hands as he clicked through his presentation. 5 years ago, I would have dismissed it as normal presentation jitters. But now, combined with that phone call... Lana! Dad's voice snapped me back. Something to add? I met Justin's warning glare and made a decision. Actually, yes, I have some thoughts on our international strategy. We've already established... Justin started. Let her speak, Mom interrupted, surprising everyone. I stood, tablet in hand. Our biggest problem isn't just losing clients, it's failing to understand why we're losing them. We're operating like it's still 1995, while our competitors are living in 2023. The board members leaned forward. Justin's face darkened. I have a proposal, I continued, to modernize our approach, one that could save us millions in the first quarter alone. Dad checked his watch. We'll table this for now. Justin's strategy is exactly what we need to hear, said a board member, Mrs. Rodriguez. But I'd like to hear Ms. Wheeler's proposal as well. Perhaps tomorrow? I nodded, ignoring Justin's clenched jaw. I'll have a full presentation ready. As the meeting adjourned, I caught Mom studying me with an unreadable expression. But it was the fury in Justin's eyes that confirmed what I already suspected. My brother was hiding something big, and my return had just thrown a wrench in his plans. Game on, big brother. Game on. You can't seriously be using Windows 7 on these systems, I muttered, staring at the ancient desktop in my new office. 3 days into my return, and every discovery was worse than the last. A knock at my door made me jump. Having fun with our vintage equipment? Veronica stood in the doorway, grinning. My oldest friend had been Wheeler Industries' HR director for 5 years, watching the company's slow decline from the inside. How does anything get done around here? I gestured at the dinosaur of a computer. It doesn't. She closed the door and lowered her voice. That's why we lost the Samsung contract last month. Their team couldn't even open our files. I groaned. Let me guess. Justin blamed it on their unreasonable technical requirements? Got it in one. Veronica perched on my desk. Speaking of your darling brother, he's been making a lot of mysterious trips to the financial district lately. Before I could respond, Justin barged in without knocking. Board meeting in 10. Try not to waste everyone's time with more of your modernization nonsense. You mean like having computers from this decade? How revolutionary. I smiled sweetly. He leaned over my desk. Listen carefully, little sister. I've spent years building relationships with these people. You can't just waltz in with your European ideas and... Is there a problem here? Mom appeared in the doorway, making Justin straighten up quickly. Just catching up, he said smoothly. Coming to the meeting? I gathered my materials. Wouldn't miss it. The conference room was packed. I took my seat, noting the unusual number of financial reports scattered across the table. Q3 projections, Justin announced, distributing more papers. As you can see, we're positioned for a strong recovery. I flipped through the pages, something nagging at my brain. The numbers looked good. Too good. These projections show a 40% increase in Asian market share, I said. How? Justin's smile tightened. Through aggressive expansion strategies I've been developing. Without updating our communication systems? I pressed. Without addressing the compatibility issues that lost us Samsung? Perhaps we should focus on the domestic market first, Dad interrupted, but Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. No, these are valid questions. Justin, please explain the technical infrastructure supporting these projections. My brother launched into a jargon-filled explanation that made several board members' eyes glaze over. I pulled up last quarter's reports on my tablet, comparing numbers. This can't be right, I muttered. Something to share? Justin snapped. I looked up. These figures don't match our Q2 reports. The baseline numbers are completely different. The room went quiet. Justin's face flushed. There was a revision. I wasn't notified of any revisions, our CFO spoke up. When was this done? I have the documentation in my office, Justin said quickly. I'll bring it this afternoon. Now, Dad ordered, his voice stern. Go get it now. Justin practically ran from the room. I used the opportunity to address the board. While we wait, I'd like to present my modernization proposal. The initial investment is significant, but the ROI... We don't have the budget, Justin announced, returning empty-handed. The documentation isn't where I thought, but I can assure you. Show me the books, I demanded. All of them. You don't have the authority. Actually, Mom spoke up. As a board member, she does. Reagan Wheeler, casting my vote to audit all financial records from the past 2 years. I second that motion, Mrs. Rodriguez added quickly. Justin's face went from red to white. This is ridiculous. Father, are you going to let them? Motion carries. Dad cut him off, looking troubled. Full audit, starting tomorrow. The meeting dissolved into chaos. I slipped out, heading straight for the accounting department. Something was very wrong with those numbers, and I needed to find out what before Justin could cover his tracks. Hey! Veronica caught up with me at the elevator. That was intense. Need help? Actually, yes. I lowered my voice. Can you get me access to the backup servers? The ones Justin doesn't know about? She smiled. Already done. Check your email. Login credentials should be there. But Lana... Her expression turned serious. Be careful. I've seen some weird transfers lately. Big ones. Back in my office, I logged into the server and started digging. 3 hours later, I found it. A pattern of suspicious transactions, all leading to an account at... Working late? I slammed my laptop shut. Justin stood in my doorway, his casual pose betrayed by white-knuckled fists. Just getting up to speed, I said calmly, heart racing. Lots to learn. Indeed. He stepped closer. Word of advice? Sometimes learning too much can be dangerous. He left before I could respond, but his message was clear. I pulled out my phone and texted Veronica. Need to talk. Not here. Bring every financial record you can find. The game had changed. This wasn't just about proving myself anymore. This was about saving our company. And if I was right about those transactions, Justin was doing a lot more than cooking the books. $6 million! Veronica's brother Damon whistled low, studying the spreadsheets spread across his kitchen table. That's not creative accounting. That's straight-up embezzlement. We'd gathered at his downtown apartment, away from prying eyes at Wheeler Industries. Veronica paced behind us, coffee cup in hand. The money's being funneled through shell companies, I explained, pointing to the transaction patterns. But I can't trace where it ends up. That's because you're not looking in the right place. Veronica stopped pacing. Remember those mysterious trips to the financial district I mentioned? Justin's been spotted at Apex Innovations. Our biggest competitor? I sat up straighter. Are you sure? My friend Scarlett works there. She's seen him meeting with their CEO at least 3 times this month. Damon, who specialized in corporate law, was already typing on his laptop. Apex's stock has jumped 30% in the last quarter, while Wheeler's tanked. That's not a coincidence. He's bankrupting us to help them, I said, the reality hitting hard. My own brother is destroying our family's company. We need proof, Damon replied. Concrete evidence that links Justin to both the missing money and Apex. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. Where are you? Your father's asking questions about the audit. I have to get back, I said, gathering the papers. Dad's already suspicious. Wait. Damon grabbed a business card. My client's having a charity gala tomorrow night. Apex's executives will be there. He slid the invitation across the table. Want to do some reconnaissance? The next evening found me in a black cocktail dress, navigating through Chicago's elite at the Drake Hotel. Veronica had insisted on coming as backup. Target at 2 o'clock, she murmured, nodding toward a group of executives. That's Marcus Phillips, Apex's CEO. I recognized him from their website, tall, silver-haired, radiating authority. But it was the younger woman beside him who caught my attention. Scarlet, Veronica waved, pulling me toward them. What a surprise. The redhead turned, her face lighting up. Veronica, and this must be Lana. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope. I shook her hand, noting her Apex employee badge partially hidden under her blazer. Of course, though your brother speaks quite differently about you. I froze. You know Justin? Oh yes, he's been… She stopped abruptly as Marcus shot her a warning look. Scarlet, perhaps you should check on the donation tallies, he said smoothly. She hurried away, leaving an awkward silence. Mr. Phillips, I smiled, channeling my best networking skills. I've been admiring Apex's recent growth. Very impressive. Thank you. He studied me carefully. Though I hear Wheeler Industries is struggling. Nothing we can't handle. In fact, we're implementing some exciting changes. His smile turned predatory. Are you? How interesting. Your brother seemed to think… He caught himself. Well, perhaps I've said too much. Before I could press further, my phone buzzed. A text from Damon. Get out now. Justin just arrived. If you'll excuse me, I said quickly, but it was too late. Lana, Justin's voice carried across the ballroom. What are you doing here? He strode over, face darkening as he saw who I was talking to. Marcus nodded slightly to him, a gesture that spoke volumes. Networking, I said brightly. Just like you. Justin grabbed my arm, pulling me aside. You need to leave. Now. Why? Afraid I'll learn something I shouldn't? His grip tightened. This is your last warning, sister. Back off. Everything okay here? Veronica appeared, with Damon close behind. Justin released me, straightening his tie. Family matter. Nothing to concern yourselves with. Actually, Damon said, as Ms. Wheeler's legal counsel, I'm very concerned about any threats made against my client. Lawyer up all you want, Justin sneered. You've got nothing. He stormed off, leaving me shaking with both fear and anger. Damon touched my shoulder gently. You okay? No. I watched Justin rejoin Marcus, their heads bent in conversation. But I will be. Did you see how they reacted when I mentioned changes at Wheeler? They're planning something big. And we need to move fast, Veronica added. Scarlett just texted me. There's a major project launch next week, something about a hostile takeover. My blood ran cold. That's what the money's for. Justin's not just helping Apex. He's funding their takeover of Wheeler Industries. We can stop him, Damon said firmly. But we need evidence that will stand up in court. I watched my brother laugh with Marcus, probably celebrating their impending victory. Then let's get it. Veronica, can you get Scarlett to talk? She nodded. She's already feeling guilty about her part in this. I'll make it worth her while. Good. I straightened my dress, determination replacing fear. Because this ends now. Justin wants to play corporate raider. Let's show him how it feels to be the one taken down. I could lose my job for this, Scarlett whispered, glancing nervously around the coffee shop. We'd chosen a spot far from both Wheeler Industries and Apex's offices for this meeting. You could face worse if the SEC investigates, I replied, sliding a folder across the table. Your signatures on some of these documents. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. I didn't know at first. Justin said it was just routine market research. And now? Now I know they're planning to destroy your family's company. She pulled out her phone, tapping quickly. The project's codenamed Phoenix. Here's the timeline. I studied the schedule she'd sent. Next Thursday? That's sooner than we thought. Marcus moved everything up after seeing you at the gala. They're worried you're catching on. She leaned forward. There's a meeting tomorrow morning. All the key players will be there, including Justin. Where? Apex's downtown office. Conference room A, 10th floor. She wrote something on a napkin. "That's the security code for the elevator. I can get you in, but you'll have to figure out the rest." My phone buzzed. Damon calling. "Excuse me," I told Scarlett, stepping away to answer. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. "Justin just called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." "What time?" 9 a.m. "Same time as the Apex meeting," I muttered. "He's creating an alibi." "Exactly. He'll be at Wheeler while his plans unfold at Apex. Perfect deniability." I returned to the table, where Scarlett was gathering her things. "Wait, I need one more favor." She paused. "What kind? Can you get me into that meeting tomorrow?" "Are you crazy? They'll recognize you immediately." "Not if I'm not there as myself." I pulled up a photo on my phone, an email announcement about Apex's new Japanese investors. "They're sending representatives, right?" Scarlett's eyes widened. "You speak Japanese?" "Fluently, among other languages." She bit her lip. "The representatives cancelled last night. No one outside Apex knows yet." "Perfect." I texted Veronica. "Need your makeup skills. Full transformation required." "This is insane," Scarlett protested. "If they catch you, they won't, but I need you to play along if anyone asks questions." The next morning, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Veronica had worked magic with contouring and a sleek black wig. Dark contacts completed the transformation. "Remember," Damon coached through my earpiece as I approached Apex's building. "You're Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo First Bank. Minimal English, lots of nodding." I entered the security code, my heart pounding as the elevator rose. Scarlett met me in the lobby, playing her part perfectly. "Ms. Tanaka, welcome to Apex. Please follow me." The conference room was already filling up. Marcus sat at the head of the table, surrounded by executives. I took my seat quietly, arranging my translator's notebook. "Shall we begin?" Marcus stood. "As you know, Project Phoenix enters its final phase next week. Our inside man has confirmed that Wheeler Industries board remains unaware of the situation." My fingers tightened around my pen as he pulled up a presentation. "The shell companies are in place. Once the transfer is complete, we'll begin aggressive acquisition of Wheeler's remaining shares." He smiled coldly. "By month's end, their assets will be ours at pennies on the dollar." "And what about the family?" someone asked. "Justin assures me they'll be too busy with internal drama to mount any defense. Speaking of which," he checked his phone. "He's keeping them distracted with a board meeting right now." The presentation continued, each slide revealing more of their scheme. I recorded everything, my hand shaking slightly as the full scope became clear. Suddenly, Scarlett's phone buzzed loudly. All eyes turned to her as she checked the message. "Sir," she said, her voice strained. "There's a situation. Justin's sister. She's presenting evidence of financial irregularities to the Wheeler board right now." The room erupted in chaos. Marcus grabbed his phone, dialing frantically. "Justin! What the hell is happening?" I used the confusion to slip out, hurrying toward the elevators. Behind me, I heard Marcus shout, "Find out what she knows, and get me everything on Project Phoenix. We need to move now." In the elevator, I pulled off the wig, hands shaking as I texted Damon. "Got it all. Every detail." "Good," he replied, "because your brother just left the board meeting in a rage. He's heading to Apex." The elevator doors opened, and I found myself face to face with Justin. For a moment, he didn't recognize me through the makeup. Then his eyes widened. "You!" he snarled, reaching for me. I ducked under his arm, sprinting for the exit. "It's over, Justin! I have everything!" "Security!" he shouted. "Stop her!" But I was already through the revolving doors, racing toward the car where Veronica waited. "Drive!" I jumped in, clutching my notebook. "Get us to Wheeler Industries. Now!" In the rearview mirror, I saw Justin emerge from the building, his face contorted with fury as he watched us disappear into traffic. The evidence was secure. Now came the hard part, confronting our family with the truth about their golden boy. "He's right behind us," Veronica warned, swerving through traffic. Justin's black Mercedes was gaining in the rearview mirror. "Take the next right," I ordered, frantically texting Damon. "We need to get these documents somewhere safe before he—" A sudden impact jolted the car. Justin had rammed us from behind. "He's lost his mind!" Veronica gripped the wheel tighter, taking a sharp turn onto Michigan Avenue. My phone rang, Mom's face appearing on the screen. I answered on speaker. "Where are you?" Her voice was tight with worry. "The board's in chaos. Your father's demanding answers." "Mom, listen carefully. Get everyone back in the conference room. Don't let anyone leave, especially Dad." "Lana, what's going on?" Another impact rocked the car. I braced against the dashboard. "Justin's been stealing from the company. Millions. I have proof, but—" The call cut off as we swerved again. Ahead, the light turned red. Veronica slammed the brakes, and I saw our chance. "Stop here! The law office is just down the block." We screeched to a halt. I grabbed my bag and the documents. "Get these to Damon. I'll handle Justin." "Lana, no." But I was already out, sprinting through stopped traffic toward Wheeler Industries. Behind me, I heard car doors slam, followed by running footsteps. "You're making a big mistake," Justin shouted. I pushed through the revolving doors, past startled security, and into the lobby. The elevator was too risky. He'd catch me. Instead, I headed for the stairs. "Miss Wheeler!" the security guard called out. "Your brother says to stop you." I burst into the stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time. Justin's footsteps echoed below, getting closer. My lungs burned as I passed the 10th floor, then the 15th. Finally, I reached our floor. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. The boardroom was just ahead. "Stop right there." Justin's voice, deadly calm, froze me in place. I turned to find him blocking the hallway, his perfect suit now disheveled, eyes wild. "It's over," I said. "Scarlett gave us everything. The shell companies, Project Phoenix, all of it." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think you've won? I own half the board. It's your word against mine, little sister. Who do you think they'll believe? Me?" Mom stepped out of the boardroom. Behind her, Dad and the entire board watched in shock. "We believe her." Justin's face went pale. "Father, I can explain—" "Explain what?" Dad's voice was like ice. "How you conspired with our competitors. How you stole from your own family." "I was trying to save us," Justin exploded. "This company is dying because you won't change. At least Apex has vision." "Vision?" I stepped forward. "They're planning to strip Wheeler Industries for parts, fire everyone. Your grand plan was to help them destroy everything our grandparents built." "You don't understand business," he sneered. "Sometimes you have to commit fraud." Damon appeared from the elevator, carrying my documents. "Securities fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage. Should I continue?" Mrs. Rodriguez emerged from the boardroom. "The SEC has been notified, as has the FBI." Justin's composure finally cracked. He lunged for the documents, but I was ready. 5 years of kickboxing classes paid off as I sidestepped, letting him stumble past me. "Don't," I warned as he recovered, fists clenched. "You've done enough damage." "Justin!" Dad's voice broke. "How could you?" "How could I?" Justin whirled on him. "You handed me a dying company and expected miracles. At least this way we'd get something out of the collapse." "We?" Mom stepped forward. "Or just you? How much were they paying you to betray us?" Before he could answer, the elevator dinged. 2 FBI agents stepped out, followed by Marcus in handcuffs. "Justin Wheeler?" One agent approached. "We need you to come with us." Everything happened quickly after that. As the agents led Justin away, I heard him shout, "You'll regret this, Lana. The company will fail without me." Dad sank into a chair, looking suddenly old. Mom gripped his shoulder, her face tight with grief. Not without her, Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. Lana's modernization plan is exactly what we need. If she's willing to take charge of the transition, all eyes turned to me. 5 years ago, I'd left because no one would listen. Now they were finally ready to hear what I had to say. I'll do it, I said, but we do this my way. Complete transparency, modern systems, no more old boys club. Dad nodded slowly. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. As the board filed back into the conference room, Veronica appeared at my side. You okay? I watched the elevator doors close on my brother's career, his freedom, and our family's trust in him. No, I admitted. But we will be. Ready to save the company? I straightened my shoulders, heading for the boardroom. Ready to rebuild it, better than before. The press is having a field day, Veronica announced, dropping a stack of newspapers on my new desk, Justin's old office. Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, they're all running with the story. I glanced at the headlines. Wheeler Industries, heir arrested in corporate scandal, and family drama leads to major fraud bust. At least they're spelling our names right, I muttered, turning back to my computer. The company's first board meeting under my leadership was in an hour, and I needed everything perfect. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. Visiting Justin today. He's asking to see you. Not happening, I typed back. He's still your brother. He's also a criminal who tried to destroy our company. A knock interrupted my response. Dad stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes instead of his usual suit. He'd stepped down as CEO last week, though he remained on the board. The office looks different, he said, eyeing the modern furniture and new tech setup that had replaced Justin's mahogany and leather. That's the point. I gestured to a chair. What brings you here? He sat heavily. Your mother wants us all to have dinner tonight, as a family. Seriously? Justin's in jail, the company's barely surviving, and she wants to play happy families? She's trying to hold us together. He rubbed his face tiredly. The reporters, the shareholders, everyone wants to know how we missed the signs, how I missed them. Before I could respond, Damon burst in. We've got trouble. Apex is making moves. What kind of moves? He handed me his tablet. They're approaching our major clients, offering steep discounts to switch services. They're trying to capitalize on the scandal. They won't succeed, I said, pulling up our new client portal. Because as of this morning, we're the only company offering real-time international communication integration. Show them. I turned the screen, displaying our revamped system. Dad leaned forward, interested despite himself. This is what you were trying to tell us about? This is just the beginning. Veronica, show him the numbers from the beta test. She pulled up the data. 98% client satisfaction, response times cut by 60%, cost reduction of... Another knock. Mrs. Rodriguez entered, looking grave. Emergency board meeting, now. But the regular meeting isn't for an hour. This can't wait. Marcus is talking. My blood ran cold. The Apex CEO had struck a deal with prosecutors, testimony for leniency. The boardroom was tense when we arrived. Several members were huddled around phones, whispering urgently. What's he saying? I demanded. Everything, Mrs. Rodriguez replied. The whole scheme. How they plan to asset strip Wheeler Industries after the takeover. How Justin was promised a position at Apex plus $20 million. Dad's face went ashen. 20 million? To betray his own family? There's more, she continued. Marcus claims other Wheeler executives were involved. He's naming names. The room erupted in chaos. Board members started shouting, pointing fingers, making accusations. Enough! I slammed my hand on the table. This stops now. Anyone involved in Justin's scheme has 1 hour to come forward voluntarily. After that, the FBI gets everything we have. And believe me, we have it all. You're bluffing, someone called out. I connected my laptop to the projector. Am I? Scarlett gave us complete access to Apex's servers. Every email, every transfer, every meeting. I started scrolling through files. Should I read them aloud? 2 board members stood up immediately. We'll cooperate, one said shakily. Smart choice. Damon will take your statements. I turned to the others. Anyone else? Silence. Good. Now, let's talk about saving this company. I launched into my presentation, showing how our new systems would revolutionize international business communication. As I spoke, I watched the fear in the room gradually transform into something else. Hope. This is ambitious, Mrs. Rodriguez said when I finished. But it could work. All in favor. Every hand went up, even Dad's. After the meeting, he lingered behind. I should have listened to you years ago. Yes, you should have. Your brother. He hesitated. He always seemed so sure, so confident. I thought that meant he knew what he was doing. Confidence isn't the same as competence, I said, gathering my things. Are you coming to Mum's dinner? He nodded. We need to stick together now. The press, the shareholders, they're all watching to see if we fall apart. Then, let's show them how Wheeler Industries handles a crisis. I headed for the door, then paused. Dad? Justin wasn't the only one who seemed sure of himself. I know what I'm doing too. I just show it differently. He smiled slightly. I'm starting to see that. As we left the office, I caught my reflection in the window. No longer the overlooked younger sister, but a leader emerging from crisis. Justin had tried to destroy our company for personal gain. I would save it by being exactly what he never was. Honest, innovative, and true to our family's real legacy. The prison visiting room was colder than I expected. Justin sat across from me in his orange jumpsuit, the past month having stripped away his polished executive veneer. Finally decided to visit your big brother? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Cut the act, I said. The prosecutors offered you a deal. Take it. He leaned forward. Or what? Or I release everything. Not just the business fraud, everything. Remember that investor you pushed out in 2019? The one who mysteriously backed out after his daughter's accident? His face darkened. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, showing him the files. Amazing what people tell me when they realize you're going down. Everyone you've hurt, everyone you've threatened, they're all talking now. You'd destroy our family's reputation just to punish me? You did that already. I'm here to contain the damage. A guard approached. Time's up. I stood, gathering my coat. The deal expires at midnight. Make the right choice for once. Wait. His voice cracked slightly. Is Dad still asking about me? Every day, I met his eyes. That's why you need to take the deal. Give them Apex. Give them everything. Let us start rebuilding. Back at Wheeler Industries, I found the office in chaos. Veronica met me at the elevator. The board's waiting, she said, hurrying beside me. Apex's lawyers made contact. They want to negotiate? They want to merge. Their stock's tanking since the scandal broke. They're desperate. I pushed open the boardroom doors to find Dad already there, looking more animated than I'd seen him in weeks. It's a good offer, he said as I sat down. We'd maintain controlling interest, and their Asian market share would... No. I cut him off. Lana, be reasonable. This could solve all our problems. Our problems started because we took shortcuts. I turned to address the whole board. Apex tried to destroy us. Now they want to save themselves by latching onto our recovery. I say let them sink. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Our new systems are already attracting attention. The Samsung contract is just the beginning, I finished. We don't need Apex. We need to be better than Apex. The debate raged for hours. Finally, the vote came down. Merger rejected. As the board filed out, my phone buzzed. A text from Damon. Justin took the deal. I showed Dad the message. He sank into his chair, relief and sadness warring on his face. It's really over then. Almost. There's one more thing we need to do. I took a deep breath. We need to tell the whole story. Publicly. What? Why? Because if we don't, someone else will. Probably Apex trying to make themselves look better. Before he could respond, Mom burst in. Albert, your heart! Dad was clutching his chest, face grey. I hit the emergency button as he slumped forward. Everything blurred into chaos. Paramedics rushing in. The ride to the hospital. Hours in the waiting room while doctors worked. Stress-induced cardiac event. The doctor finally explained. He's stable, but he needs rest. No work. No stress. Mom turned to me, tears in her eyes. This is what business does to families. Maybe we should sell after all. No. I stood up. Dad spent his life building Wheeler Industries. Justin tried to destroy it. I won't let either of their sacrifices be for nothing. Then what do you suggest? I pulled out my laptop. We tell our story, the whole truth. Show everyone how we're fixing what's broken in the company and our family. For the next few hours, I drafted the press release while Mom sat with Dad. When she returned, I showed her what I'd written. It's very honest, she said, reading. About Justin, about our mistakes, about everything. That's the point. No more secrets, no more pretending. She touched my hand. When did you get so wise? When I stopped trying to be what everyone expected and started being what the company needed. My phone buzzed again. Veronica, turn on CNBC now! I grabbed the remote in Dad's hospital room. The breaking news banner made us all freeze. Apex Innovations, CEO indicted, Wheeler Industries vindicated. The reporter continued. In a stunning development, Marcus Phillips and several Apex executives have been indicted on multiple fraud charges. Sources say Justin Wheeler's testimony was instrumental. Mum started crying. Dad, still groggy, managed a small smile. He did the right thing, I said softly. Finally. What happens now? Mum asked. I looked at Dad in his hospital bed, at the news showing our company's name cleared, at the press release telling our true story. Now we rebuild. The right way this time. Dad reached for my hand. Lead the way, daughter. Lead the way. Outside the hospital window, the Chicago skyline glittered in the evening light. Somewhere in that maze of buildings, Wheeler Industries waited for its fresh start. And this time, we'd build something worthy of our family's name. All of our family, even the ones who lost their way. Ready? Veronica asked, straightening my blazer as we stood outside the conference hall. As I'll ever be. Through the doors, I could hear the murmur of reporters and industry leaders gathering for Wheeler Industries' public relaunch. Dad appeared beside me, looking healthier after his recovery. The board's seated. It's time. I took the stage to camera flashes and curious faces. Every major business publication was here to witness our company's resurrection. Wheeler Industries was built on a simple principle, I began. That honest communication builds lasting success. We lost sight of that principle, and it nearly destroyed us. Movement at the back of the room caught my eye. Justin, in a suit instead of prison orange, slipped in quietly. His supervised release for the event had been approved just yesterday. But crisis taught us something valuable, I continued. Real strength isn't in maintaining a perfect image. It's in acknowledging our failures and learning from them. I launched the presentation, showcasing our new global communication platform. The audience leaned forward as real-time translations appeared across multiple screens, connecting offices from Tokyo to São Paulo. "This is the future of international business," I explained. "No more barriers, no more outdated systems, no more shortcuts." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up. "Wheeler Industries stock has risen 40% since implementing these changes. Client retention is at an all-time high." Questions flew from the audience. I handled each one, noting Justin's expression growing more thoughtful with each answer. "And what about the family dynamic?" a reporter asked. "How do you handle working with your father after everything that happened?" Dad stepped forward to the microphone. "By remembering what matters most. I spent years looking for a worthy successor, not realizing she was right in front of me. Lana didn't just save our company, she made it better." Tears pricked my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. "We're not perfect. We're still healing, but we're doing it together, honestly and openly." After the presentation, Justin approached as reporters packed up their gear. "That was impressive," he said quietly. "The translation matrix, the integration systems, it's what we should have done years ago. Better late than never." He nodded toward the screens still displaying our global network. "You know, in prison, I had a lot of time to think about why I did what I did. And I was scared. The company was struggling, and I thought power meant never showing weakness." He met my eyes. "You proved me wrong. Showing our vulnerability made us stronger." "Justin," I started, but he held up a hand. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet, but I want to make things right." "How?" He pulled out a folder. "My personal assets. What's left after restitution. I want to donate them to fund scholarships for international business students. In your name." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because you saw what I didn't, that the future of business is about breaking down walls, not building them higher." Before I could respond, Mom appeared. "The board's waiting. They want to discuss expansion plans." Justin stepped back. "Go. Lead them better than I did." In the boardroom, faces both old and new looked to me expectantly. Veronica gave me a thumbs up from her new seat as Chief of Global Communications. "The press response is overwhelming," Mrs. Rodriguez reported. 3 major corporations want to adopt our communication platform." "Let them," I said. "But we do this carefully, ethically. No cutting corners." Dad smiled from his advisory seat. "The Wheeler way, the right way." "Speaking of which," Damon interjected, "Apex's assets are up for auction. Their Asian market share could be ours." I thought of Justin's words about breaking down walls. "No, we're not taking over anyone. We're going to build something new, something that helps other companies grow alongside us." "A rising tide lifts all boats," Dad mused. "Exactly." I pulled up our global map. "We're not just selling communication systems. We're building bridges between companies, countries, people." "That's gonna take time," someone cautioned. "Then we take the time." I looked around the room, at the faces that had supported me, doubted me, and finally trusted me. We do it right, or we don't do it at all. As the meeting concluded, I paused by the window overlooking the city. My reflection showed someone different from the uncertain woman who'd returned home months ago. Someone stronger, wiser, but also more compassionate. Mom joined me. "Proud of you, sweetheart." "Think we'll be okay?" She squeezed my hand. "We already are. You know why? Because you didn't just fix the company, you fixed our family. Even Justin." Through the glass, I watched my brother being escorted to his waiting transport. He turned, caught my eye, and nodded once. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding, recognition, respect. I nodded back, then turned to face my future. Wheeler Industries hadn't just survived, it had transformed. And so had I. "Ready for what's next?" Veronica asked, tablet in hand. I smiled, heading for my office. "Always. Let's build something amazing."
Hi, I'm Varel. My parents left me a single thing in their will, an old broken bed. No money, no property, just that. At first, I thought it was an insult, but then I found what was hidden inside, and everything changed. Turns out, the bed wasn't broken. It was a message, a warning, a key to the truth they tried to bury along with my mother's name. The law office smelled like furniture polish and stale power. Mahogany walls, deep leather chairs, everything screamed wealth, tradition, and cold judgment. I sat quietly in the corner, pretending not to notice the subtle glances, the shared smirks between old partners and firm assistants. But I noticed everything. I always did. Kaylin stood near the window, perfectly tailored suit, expensive shoes, and that smug little smirk that had followed him since high school. He looked like he already owned the place, and in many ways, he probably did. The estate, the business, the legacy, all of it. Me? I was the family footnote. Garrick Miles cleared his throat. "Thank you all for being here this morning," he began, his voice as crisp as his pinstriped suit. "This reading is, of course, in accordance with the last will and testament of Thorne Vexley." He didn't look at me. No one did. I stared at my hands. I could still hear my father's voice, always talking numbers and margins, and my mother's voice, softer, but never loud enough to matter. I never measured up, not to their standards. Not to Kaylin. The lawyer's words bled into one another until I heard my name. "To Varel Vexley." Garrick paused, shifting awkwardly in his chair. "Our daughter, we leave the antique shaker bed currently stored in the attic." That was it. A bed. A busted, unused piece of furniture shoved into the dark corners of a house I wasn't even welcome in anymore. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Garrick cleared his throat again. "The bed. Your mother, Elira, had expressed that it held personal value." Kaylin let out a low chuckle. "Guess someone's sleeping alone forever, huh?" Laughter rippled softly around the room, as if cruelty was some kind of sport. Garrick glanced at me, then away. His face flushed, but he said nothing. I didn't. I wouldn't. Not yet. After the reading, Kaylin caught me in the hallway. "Don't take it personally, sis," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder like we were still in some childhood game. "Dad always said you had a knack for antiques. Guess he thought you'd appreciate junk." "Don't touch me," I muttered, stepping out from under his hand. He raised both eyebrows, feigning innocence. "Come on, you're still part of the family. Maybe we'll find you a spot at the foundation. Receptionist? Archivist? Something with less pressure." I walked away without another word. If I'd stayed, I might have screamed. By nightfall, I was back in my apartment. 2-bedroom, 3rd floor, nothing fancy but mine. The bed had already been delivered. It sat in the center of my living room, wrapped in moving blankets, looking even older than I remembered. Thick, carved wood, worn varnish, cracked at the joints. A metaphor, maybe. I stood there staring at it for a long time. Then I noticed the markings. Not just scratches or time-worn dings. Symbols. Deliberate carvings etched under the headboard. Shapes too regular to be random. I leaned in, running my fingers along one of the grooves. There was a knock at my window. My body froze. I turned slowly, heart slamming in my chest. Outside, parked across the street, a black SUV idled, engine humming low like a threat. I couldn't make out the driver, but the timing wasn't a coincidence. I walked to the window, pulled the blinds. My phone buzzed a moment later. Unknown number. "You don't know what you're sleeping on. Walk away." My stomach twisted. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail. I scrolled through my recent messages. Nothing from Kalen, but I knew his games. This was his way of telling me to stay in my lane. A text from my neighbor popped up next. Jane, 2B. Hey, just FYI. Think someone was trying your door earlier? Creep me out. Be safe. I checked the locks, all three. Deadbolt, chain, slide bar. Then I pulled the blankets off the bed completely and dropped to the floor, inspecting the legs, the slats underneath. One of the supports didn't match. Lighter wood, poorly repaired. Not my father's style, not my mother's either. I sat back on my heels, staring at the broken frame. This wasn't a keepsake. It was a message. They gave me a broken bed, but something about it didn't feel accidental. My mother never did anything without meaning. And my father? He never left anything unless it was worthless or dangerous. I lay in bed that night, not even bothering to move the antique to the other room. I stared at it through the dark, heart pounding, every creak in the hallway turning my blood to ice. They thought they could humiliate me into silence, but they gave me something they were afraid of. I didn't sleep. I lay there on the couch, blanket draped across my legs, eyes fixed on that damn bed. The wood grain seemed to move in the dark, like something inside it was breathing. That SUV never came back, but I kept checking the window anyway. And the text. I couldn't get it out of my head. You don't know what you're sleeping on. Walk away. Walk away from what? I wasn't the paranoid type. I restored centuries-old tapestries for a living. Attention to detail was my job. And right now, my gut was telling me that bed wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a setup, a warning, or a clue. Kalen. It had to be him. He always played power games, but this felt different, calculated. Like he knew I'd find something, maybe hoped I'd miss it. That wasn't just a threat, it was a leash. And I don't do leashes. I sat up and turned on the lamp, its yellow glow spilling across the room. My tools were in the hallway closet. Dental picks, soft brushes, angled blades. I grabbed the smallest one and kneeled beside the bed. I ran my fingers along the frame again, this time slower. There, near the base of the headboard. A hairline seam, smooth and too perfect. You wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I pressed gently. Nothing. I angled the blade in and pried. A small click. I paused. My breath hitched. Not in fear, but in anticipation. The panel gave way with a soft creak, revealing a narrow compartment, barely the size of a shoebox. Inside, a tightly rolled bundle wrapped in parchment. I reached in carefully and pulled it out, heart pounding. Not from fear now, but adrenaline. I unwrapped the parchment slowly, like I was peeling away years of lies. Inside were several folded sheets, diagrams drawn by hand, blueprints, or at least that was my first impression. But the lines weren't just mechanical, they were artistic. Curved symbols, patterns tucked into corners. It wasn't just engineering, it was coded. One slip of paper fluttered loose. At the bottom corner, 3 initials in ink, E.V., Elira Vexley. My mother. My throat tightened. For a moment, the room fell silent. I forgot about Kalen. I forgot about the inheritance, the SUV, even the humiliation at the will reading. I was just a daughter holding a message from the one woman who had barely spoken above a whisper her whole life. I laid everything out on the floor, smoothing the pages with trembling fingers. There were layers, designs of mechanical parts overlaid with symbols I hadn't seen since graduate school. Hidden geometry, optical illusions, stenography maybe. My mother hadn't just been collecting antiques. She'd been encoding something inside one. They thought it was junk, I whispered, but they never looked. She'd hidden it in plain sight, because she knew I'd understand it. Not Kalen, not Dad. Me. I kept studying, flipping through each sheet. One was labeled Sequence 1, and another, Anchor Points, but without a key, I couldn't interpret much. I'd need time, and quiet. My phone buzzed again. Kalen. Let it go, Varel. You don't know what you're doing. I stared at the screen. Me. You're right. I don't, not yet. I set the phone face down. They didn't expect me to find this. Maybe they didn't even know it was there. But something in my mother's silence, something in the way she watched me during those last few months, was starting to make sense. She'd been trying to say something, trying to pass something on, and I'd been too wrapped up in feeling forgotten to notice. Well, I noticed now. I turned over the largest blueprint again. In the bottom corner, barely visible unless you tilted the page toward the light, a line of cursive handwriting appeared. Only she will understand. I stared at it for a long moment, breath caught somewhere between awe and heartbreak. My mother had been speaking to me, I said out loud, and now I was listening. I didn't cry. I thought I would, should, but instead, I just sat there on the hardwood floor, blueprints spread across my knees, chest so tight it hurt to breathe. There were too many emotions, layered like the lines on that drawing. Grief, regret, a strange kind of wonder. Only she will understand. Those words weren't a riddle. They were a door. I folded the blueprint with care and placed it in a folder, then padded into the kitchen to make tea. My hands were shaking. The kettle hissed. I needed someone to talk to, someone who had known her, really known her, someone who hadn't smiled through lies and handed me a bed like it was an afterthought. I picked up my phone and dialed Hestia. She answered on the second ring. "Virel? I need to see you," I whispered. "Please." She didn't ask why. "Come now." By the time I reached her house, dawn had just begun to tint the sky with light. Her porch light was on, just like always. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a knit shawl, eyes already glistening. "Oh, honey," she said as I walked in. "It's finally happening, isn't it?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She made me sit, placed her hands over mine, like she used to when I was 10 and afraid of thunderstorms. Then she walked to the sideboard and pulled out a small wooden box, aged and familiar. "She gave this to me months before she passed," Hestia said, voice trembling. "Told me not to open it. Said it was meant for you, when you were ready to stop listening to your brother." I opened the box. Inside was an old digital recorder. I clicked play. The voice that came through was soft, weary, but unmistakable. "Virel, my darling, if you're hearing this, it means you found what I couldn't protect while I was alive." I pressed a hand to my mouth. "I tried, sweetheart. I fought for you. I even went to a lawyer to establish a trust, something that couldn't be touched. But your father, he found out. He called me unfit, said I was poisoning you with delusions. He threatened to take you away, said, if you make one more move, you'll never see her again." My chest ached. He made me small, Virel, in court, in front of our friends, even in front of you. And I let him, because I thought survival was quieter than war. The recording ended with a pause so long, I thought it was over. Then, barely a whisper. "But I've always believed in you. You see things no one else notices. And I prayed, every single day, that someday you'd stop believing them and start believing in yourself." I couldn't hold it anymore. The tears came silently, spilling down my cheeks as Hestia placed a tissue in my lap and said nothing. My mother had never been weak. She had been silenced. All those nights, I'd thought she was staring out the window in quiet defeat. She was planning, hiding, waiting. And I had hated her for giving up. But she never did. Not really. Hestia pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in years, I let myself be held like a child. "They never deserved her," I said against her shoulder. "No, they didn't," Hestia replied, but she made sure they'd never forget her. I left the house an hour later, sun fully risen, birds beginning their endless chatter across the Providence rooftops. I felt heavier than before, but also somehow steadier. As I pulled into my apartment parking lot, a black envelope sat tucked beneath my windshield wiper. Inside, a single line scrawled in block letters. "You're walking into something you don't understand. Turn back." I looked up, scanning the quiet street. Then I laughed. Quiet, bitter, final. They keep warning me, I muttered, but the only thing I don't understand is how they thought I'd stay quiet. 2 days passed. I barely left the apartment except to pick up supplies. Extra batteries, a burner phone, tools from my studio. I kept the blinds shut, slept during daylight, drank black coffee at midnight. I didn't feel paranoid, I felt prepared. The symbols on the blueprint weren't just decorative. They were directional, coordinates embedded in overlapping angles. Once aligned, they pointed to a spot just outside the city. A place I didn't remember. A place my father wouldn't want on paper. I drove alone, headlights cutting through the dark stretch of road like a blade. My GPS kept glitching. Once, the screen blinked black for 5 seconds before returning to life. It didn't matter. I was already close. The warehouse looked abandoned. Cracked windows. Condemned signs peeling off the front. But the lock on the side gate? New, clean, recently installed. I parked half a block away and approached on foot. The air around the building felt stale, still, like everything inside was holding its breath. I found the side entrance, rusted but barely latched. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Sensors clicked on. Low amber lights flickered along the walls. A hum rolled beneath the floor, faint and steady, electric systems still running. This place wasn't dead. Someone had been keeping it alive. I walked past metal beams, empty crates, a conveyor belt frozen mid-motion. Then a voice came from the shadows. "You came, just as I hoped." I froze. The voice wasn't Kaylin's. A figure stepped forward, and my world tilted. It was him, Thorn Vexley, alive. I stumbled back a step, grabbing the nearest support beam. He looked exactly as I remembered. Same broad shoulders, same calculating eyes, but thinner, paler, like someone who had traded sunlight for control. "Dad?" I whispered. He smiled. "Not quite the ghost you expected, huh?" My legs felt like lead. "You're supposed to be dead. Death is relative," he said calmly. "Sometimes disappearing is more efficient than dying." Before I could respond, another figure stepped out behind him. Of course. Kaylin. He looked too pleased with himself. "Told you she'd figure it out." "You?" I looked between them. "You faked it. You both. This whole thing. What was it? A test? A game?" "Insurance," Thorn replied. "Your mother had started leaking information. Little things at first. Patents, names. Then she built that bed." My heart punched against my ribs. "She didn't build it to store secrets. She built it to protect them, from you." Thorn tilted his head. "She built it for you. That was her mistake." I stepped back, hand reaching instinctively toward my pocket. My phone, a recorder, anything. "She trusted me," I said, voice shaking, "because she knew you'd come after me next." He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small remote, pressed play. A recording played through hidden speakers. Her voice again. "Elira Vexley, March 14th. Thorn threatened to have Varel removed from the home. Said if I didn't stop pursuing the trust, he'd file for custody, claim mental instability, fabricate medical reports. Said, 'She'll be mine before you can blink.'" My knees buckled. "That's enough," I snapped. Thorn turned off the recording. "You were never the target, Varel. You were leverage. You were the perfect pawn." A silence hung in the air like smoke. Then I spoke, lower than before. "You threatened to erase me." "No," Thorn said coolly. "I threatened to use you. Big difference." I clenched my jaw, stepping forward. "You don't get to define that." "You don't get to rewrite history, sweetheart," Kaylin added. "Mom lost. You were just too naive to see it." "You know what?" I said, my voice rising like a tide, slow but certain. "I might have been naive, but I see clearly now." Thorn took a step closer, voice low, almost sympathetic. "You're in over your head, Varel. If you walk away now, I'll forgive the trespass. Stay, and you'll regret it." I looked into his face, The man who taught me fear and called it structure. The man who claimed silence was safety. The man who tried to bury my mother in life and in death. "No," I said, meeting his stare. "You don't get to erase women anymore." I walked out of that warehouse with my pulse hammering in my throat and my fists clenched so tight, my nails left half-moon dents in my palms. "You don't get to erase women anymore." I didn't say it for them. I said it for her, for my mother, for the woman they spent years calling unstable, irrelevant, fragile. But she wasn't fragile. She was filtered out, censored, sanitized from their version of the truth. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the floor with the documents from the hidden compartment, pages spread across my living room like shattered glass. Blueprints, test notes, sketches, patent filings never submitted. It was all here, and nestled among them, folded inside an old manila envelope, was a laminated press clipping. Vexley Industries named Innovator of the Decade. The article praised the invention that had revolutionized small-scale energy transfer in urban housing infrastructure. The photo showed Kalen, grinning like he'd built the thing with his bare hands. But the diagram they used, the one displayed behind him during the award ceremony, was my mother's. Word for word. Stroke for stroke. Even her signature loop in the lower right corner was faintly visible beneath the company logo they'd slapped over it. I stared at that page, my vision blurring. My breath grew shallow. They didn't just take her voice, they took her genius, sold it, celebrated it, turned her into nothing while they bathed in applause. I whispered, they stole her brilliance and put their names on it. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a click, a decision. The next morning, I messaged a woman I used to follow during my undergrad days. Her name was Dana Fields, an investigative reporter who didn't pull punches and had a knack for blowing open corporate scandals. She agreed to meet in a downtown cafe 2 hours later. She arrived in a gray coat, messenger bag slung over one shoulder, laptop already open before she sat down. "All right, Varel," she said. "You said this wasn't just personal. Prove it." I handed her the folder. No hesitation. She flipped through the document slowly at first, then faster. Her brows drew closer together. "This blueprint," she muttered, tapping a corner. "Where did you get this?" "It was hidden in an antique bed my parents left me, one that used to be in my mother's studio." "Are you aware this exact design was featured in the Vexley Industries patent suite 5 years ago?" "I am now." She looked up at me. "If these dates are accurate, and these sketches predate their submission, this isn't a dispute. This is theft, fraud, maybe even racketeering." "I don't need a court to tell me what I already know," I said quietly, "but I need the world to hear it." Dana leaned back, nodding slowly. "You realize what you're doing, right? This isn't just family dirt. This is going to hit a national level." "Good," I said. "Let it burn." That night, the article went live. Buried genius. Was Vexley's legacy built on a stolen foundation? It started as a ripple on niche media. Within 2 hours, it was trending. Major outlets picked it up. My inbox exploded. Some of it support, much of it venom. "You should have stayed in your lane. You're ruining your family. Ungrateful little parasite." And from Kalen, of course. "You've made a big mistake." He didn't even try to mask it as concern. Just power trying to hold the last thread of control. I stared at his message for a long time, then deleted it. Instead, I picked up my phone, switched the camera to front-facing, and hit record. "My name is Virel Vexley. I'm an art restoration specialist. I'm also the daughter of Elira Vexley, a woman who created something brilliant and died with the world believing she was nothing." I paused. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed firm. "You told me to stay silent. I stayed silent too long. Now, I speak for her." I posted the video and powered off my phone. No hashtags, no tags, no theatrics, just truth. Plain, brutal, overdue. By morning, my inbox had imploded. Not even an hour passed before the retaliation started. Messages flooded in from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were silent. Others hissed veiled threats through encrypted apps. One read simply, "Nice move. Hope your fire alarms work." Then the building manager knocked on my door. "Miss Vexley, fire inspection, unscheduled." He looked nervous. Too nervous for a man who had worked here 10 years. I didn't open the door. "Send them back with a warrant." He hesitated, then mumbled something and left. I watched him through the peephole, phone clenched in my hand. They were poking, pushing, seeing if I'd flinch. I gave them a chance to back off. They didn't take it. So I opened the last envelope, the one my mother had sealed with red wax and a note. "Only if they come for you." Inside was a USB drive and a single sheet of paper. On it, 3 words. Clarity Protocol, Initiate. I plugged it into my laptop, and instantly, a password screen appeared. Blank, except for a blinking cursor. I didn't hesitate. The answer had been etched in that bed frame since the beginning. I typed in the first sequence of overlapping triangles from the blueprint. The screen flickered. Then her voice filled the room again. "If you're seeing this, they came for you too." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her voice wash over me. "This system is a fail-safe," she said. "Every file, every recording, every blueprint archived here, encrypted, ready to go where they can't bury it. You'll have one chance to activate it." A list of recipient nodes began to scroll down the screen. SEC, DOJ, EPO, YPO, CNN, The Guardian, Reuters, ProPublica. Hundreds of files populated the progress bar: audio logs, internal emails, false statements, whistleblower testimonies with dates that made my stomach turn. Kaylin's voice on tape. "She's already dead weight. Let's make sure she stays buried." My hand hovered over the final command. There was no going back, but there was also no other way forward. I clicked Upload. The screen turned black for a heartbeat, then filled with pulsing white light. Clarity Protocol activated. Secure transmission in progress. My eyes burned, not from tears, but from the clarity my mother had always believed I'd one day find. She had built this, hidden it beneath decades of silence, left it for the one person they never saw coming. Me. I watched the bar fill, 12%, 39%, 72%. Then, Clarity Protocol completed. Data integrity confirmed. All nodes received. The room fell still. My phone buzzed again. "Kaylin, you've destroyed everything." I stared at his message. Then I typed back, "Not everything. Only the lie." I sat back, breath catching for a second. The sun had broken through the clouds outside, casting long stripes across the hardwood. My apartment had never looked brighter, or more like a war room. I didn't feel like a daughter anymore. I felt like the person my mother always believed I could be. Not just a witness, not just a voice. A reckoning. I walked into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked into the mirror. For the first time, I didn't see my father's disappointment or my brother's smugness. I saw me, unshaken. I leaned closer to the reflection, voice barely a whisper. Now we see who they really are when the masks come off. The next 2 days moved like a landslide. No control, no warning, only impact. Every news outlet ran a variation of the same headline. Vexley Empire implodes amid intellectual property scandal. Clarity Protocol leak sparks DOJ, SEC investigation. Buried genius. Who was Elira Vexley? I sat on my couch, knees hugged to my chest, watching it all unfold with the quiet intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Stock prices dropped like a stone. Investors bailed. The board of directors called an emergency vote, then another, then stopped answering their phones altogether. By noon on the second day, the company's legal counsel issued a public statement. They welcomed cooperation with the investigation and would reevaluate internal systems and historic filings. Translation: they were scrambling. My phone didn't stop vibrating. Journalists, lawyers, former employees, some I hadn't seen since childhood. One of them texted, "They used her work. You proved it. We're behind you." I didn't want applause. I wanted accountability. And justice was now playing on every screen in America. A federal judge confirmed what I already knew. My mother's patents were never legally transferred. Her inventions had been hijacked, repackaged, and filed under Vexley Industries without her consent. The court not only voided those filings, but reinstated Alira Vexley as the rightful holder of every IP license connected to those innovations. And because I was her sole heir, ownership passed to me. The boardroom inside Vexley HQ looked like the aftermath of a battlefield. Half the chairs were empty. The remaining members sat stiff, pale, watching the SEC reps shuffle through files at the end of the table. I stood at the head seat. I didn't sit. Someone murmured, "She controls the patents now." Another replied, "We're working for her." I kept my voice calm. "You're not working for me. You're deciding whether to work for what's next." That's when the door slammed open. Kalen. His face was crimson, jaw clenched tight enough to snap. "You think you've won?" he spat. "You just blew up our legacy. You destroyed everything Dad built." "No," I said coolly. "You did that yourselves. I just turned on the lights." He turned to the board. "She's unstable. You all know this. This whole mess. She doesn't have the temperament to run anything." Silence. Then one board member, an older man with tired eyes, looked him square in the face. "Kalen, you forged documents and buried your own mother's name. You lost the right to call anyone unstable." Even security stepped forward when Kalen raised his voice again. "I will not be erased," he barked. "Not by her, not by anyone." "You erased her first," I replied. "And now everyone knows it." He stormed out. I didn't watch him leave. Instead, I turned to the table. "I'm not here to clean up your image," I said. "I'm here to make sure this company becomes what it pretended to be." No one challenged me. Later that evening, I stepped into what used to be my mother's private lab. Cleaned, restored, humming with low light and new purpose. It was quiet, but not empty. Her presence lived in every blueprint still tacked to the wall, every prototype lined with careful hands. I walked to the far end of the room, where a photograph of her had been boxed away years ago. I placed it on the center of the desk. She was smiling in it. The real kind. Proud. Peaceful. "They built this empire with stolen dreams," I whispered. "Now it belongs to the woman they erased." It had been a week. 7 quiet days since the board fell silent. Since Kalen vanished from the building, and the lawyers stopped circling like vultures. Since the press shifted their attention to the next scandal and left my mother's face, finally, framed in truth. But my chest still ached. I wandered the restored lab slowly, fingertips grazing the edge of her desk, the metal edge of a prototype, the faded ink of her handwritten formulas. It wasn't just equipment. It was her story, pressed into paper and wires. I won the battle, but I still lost her. No court ruling could give me back the time we should have had. No headline could undo the nights I spent wondering if she'd ever truly loved me, or if I had just been a reminder of everything she'd lost. That doubt had always haunted me, until Hestia called. She met me outside the old apartment she now shared with her daughter. Her hands were gentler than I remembered, her voice lower, weathered. "She asked me to wait," she said, pressing the envelope into my palm. "Until the storm passed, until you were ready." The envelope was cream-colored, heavy. My name written in long, curved strokes I knew by heart. Virel. I didn't open it there. I waited until I got home, locked the door, sat in silence, and let my fingers tremble just once before tearing it open. The letter smelled faintly of lavender. "My darling girl, if you're holding this, then you've done more than I ever could. You didn't just survive them, you saw through them, and you chose something better. I didn't leave you the company, or the money, or the approval you deserved. I left you something stronger. The truth." I stopped reading, breathing through the pressure building behind my eyes. I know I failed you in ways you won't always be able to name. I let them silence me because I thought I was protecting you. But maybe I was also afraid. Afraid that if I fought too hard, they'd erase me completely and take you with them. You were never invisible, Varel. You were my reason. That line undid me. I sat there on the floor, clutching the pages to my chest like a life raft, sobbing into the sleeves of the sweatshirt she used to wear on rainy days. It smelled like dust now, but in that moment, it felt like her arms. The rest of the letter wasn't about the company. It wasn't about patents or revenge or strategy. It was about motherhood and the kind of love that survives even the cruelest kinds of silence. By the time I folded it and slid it into a frame, the world felt a little different. Not quieter, not easier, but honest. 2 days later, I received a single email from Kaylin. "You win, I'm sorry." No signature, no attachments, no blame. I didn't reply. Instead, I submitted paperwork to create the Elira Vexley Foundation, a memorial scholarship for women in invention and design. Full ride. No legacy names required. I gave the antique bed to the museum we launched with it. Visitors walk past it now, not as a symbol of rejection, but as the blueprint of a truth that outlived its burial. In my new office, formerly hers, I kept it simple. White walls, her painting, my tools, and her letter sitting framed beside my monitor. Not hidden anymore. Not encrypted. That night, after locking up, I turned off the lights, letting the skyline bathe the room in amber. I stared out across Providence and whispered to the dark, "You gave me a broken bed, but it held the blueprint to everything I needed to become." 2 months passed. The building didn't look the same anymore. It didn't feel the same either. Gone were the sharp edges, the sterile walls, the aura of dominance that used to hover like a shadow over Vexley Industries. Now, a new sign glinted in the morning sun. Aurora Innovations. In honor of Elira Vexley, whose light could not be silenced. I stood beside it as the plaque was unveiled, wind tugging at the hem of my blazer. Behind me, young inventors prepared their prototypes for the Foundation's first innovation fair. Nervous laughter bubbled up as they adjusted displays, tested code, rewired circuits. You could feel it in the air, energy without fear. I closed my eyes for a moment and imagined her standing beside me, arms crossed, chin tilted, that small, proud smile she used to wear when no one was watching. She would have liked this. Not the sign or the building or the name, the purpose. Later that afternoon, Hestia knocked gently on my office door. "You've got something," she said, holding out a cream-colored envelope. It had no return address, no postage, just my name, in handwriting that once filled the margins of my childhood notebooks. Varel. I opened it carefully. The letter inside wasn't long. It was from Kaylin, not typed, written. That alone surprised me. "I assume you've won, or are close enough it doesn't matter. I've had time to think. Not that it's helped much. You always wanted answers. I don't have any. I just keep wondering, do you really think she'd be proud of you doing all of this? Without me?" That question sat with me longer than I expected. I didn't hate him, not anymore. Hatred took energy, and mine was going somewhere better now. I folded the letter once, twice, then slid it into the drawer beside my mother's final words. He wasn't owed a reply, but he was owed the truth. The same truth he ran from. She wouldn't have been proud of me because I did it alone. She'd have been proud despite it. The real inheritance was never the company. It was never the power. It was seeing what she saw all along. I walked down the hall into the newly opened East Wing, now a gallery of restored blueprints and preserved designs. At the end of the room, in a quiet glass case under soft light, sat the bed. Polished, reassembled. Its secret panel opened just enough to reveal the blueprint tucked inside. Some visitors saw it and smiled. Others whispered, confused. One teenager pointed and said, "That's where it started." They weren't wrong. I stepped closer and read the etched plaque, the bed that carried a legacy. For a moment, I rested my hand on the glass. A goodbye. A beginning. That night, I sat by my apartment window, writing in a new journal, the kind with thick pages and no lines, just space for whatever needed to come out. They left me nothing. But somehow, it became everything. The broken bed, the buried blueprints, the truth they tried to hide. Success built on lies will always collapse. But truth? That will outlive us all. I closed the journal and looked out at the city. No fireworks. No headlines screaming my name anymore. Just quiet. And for the first time in years, I welcomed it. Sometimes what you inherit isn't money. It isn't a house, a name, or even the approval you spent a lifetime chasing. Sometimes what you inherit is a mess. A secret. A wound that no one warned you about. But I've learned that even a broken inheritance can become something powerful if you choose to rebuild it with truth. My story started with humiliation, a single splintered bed frame. But in the end, it gave me everything. The truth about who my mother was, the strength I didn't know I had, and the chance to rewrite what legacy really means. So let me ask you something. What are you carrying that might look like a burden, but could be hiding something bigger? A story waiting to be heard. A voice that's been silenced. A dream no one believed in, yet. I hope my journey reminds you that your worth isn't defined by what others give you, but by what you choose to create from it. If this story reached something in your heart today, leave a comment with a 1, or let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too, and if it didn't land for you, I'd still love to know why. This space is for all of us. And hey, if you're still watching, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. I'm Diana. I flew to Italy thinking I was helping plan my mother's birthday tour, only to find out I'd been written out of my own family, seat by seat, line by line, face by face. They gave my role to someone else. They edited me out of the video. They even said I didn't belong. So I canceled the entire European tour because it was my name on every contract. But the truth is, this didn't start in Florence. It started years ago, with silences, sideways looks, and secrets no one thought I'd ever uncover. How does a mother erase her own daughter? And how do you stay strong when the people you love choose to pretend you're invisible? The night air was warm, thick with the kind of Tuscan summer that clings to your skin like silk and sweat. I stood just outside the rooftop restaurant, watching my family trail in ahead of me like I wasn't even there. No one turned around, not even Callum. We were in Florence for Odessa's 70th. My mother's grand European birthday tour, planned down to the minute, every reservation handpicked by me. Flights, menus, villas, even the goddamn floral arrangements. The entire trip was a gift from my company, but apparently even that wasn't enough to earn me a chair. I scanned the long table set beneath twinkling lights and manicured olive trees. Each name card was scripted in soft gold calligraphy. I didn't see mine. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't tremble. That would have meant I was surprised. "Sweetheart," Odessa cooed when I stepped closer. Her voice always had that razor sugar tone that made strangers think she was elegant. "Maybe you're tired. You don't have to stay for the whole dinner." There it was. The kind of sentence that's wrapped in a smile, but meant to push you quietly out of the room. Callum cleared his throat, barely looking up. "Maybe someone just miscounted," he said half-heartedly. His arm brushed against Vivian's. His new arm candy. Her eyes flicked up, blinked once, then shifted away. "Miscounted. You don't miscount your own daughter at a table of 13. I looked again. Every place card was aligned with precision. Napkins folded just right. Wine glasses already filled. The table was perfect. It was always perfect when I designed it. Except tonight, there was one intentional absence. I gave a small nod and stepped away before my voice cracked. Inside the hallway that led to the staff prep area, I paused. I wasn't sure if I needed to breathe or scream. That's when a server, Marco, I remembered his name, approached me, hesitating. Senora Halden. He lowered his voice, glancing over his shoulder. Your name was on the chart this morning. I saw it myself. But this afternoon, a new version came through. Your name was removed. I'm sorry. His apology landed softer than it should have, like he didn't expect me to be shocked. And I wasn't. Not really. I nodded again, whispered, Thank you, and turned to face the full-length mirror beside the wine cabinet. I studied the woman staring back. Hair pinned, dress flawless, lips just bold enough. Everything on me had been chosen to look like I belonged. And still, no seat. This wasn't the first time she'd done this. Not in this way, no. But my mother had made an art of cutting me out in slow, deliberate motions for years. When I was 11, she invited all my cousins to see the Nutcracker in New York for Christmas. Except me. Her excuse? You had the flu, darling. Except I didn't. I had a spelling bee. At 17, she told me Callum wasn't a long-term man. At 29, she made sure our wedding photographer got more photos of her than me. I was always just slightly out of frame. And now, at 38, here we were again. I was still just outside the shot. I walked back toward the dining area, the clinking of glasses and laughter folding into a low, contemptuous hum. They were mid-toast. Odessa raised her flute and smiled like a woman being crowned queen of her own fairy tale. I stood at the edge of the table, behind Callum. He didn't turn. I waited until the laughter dipped, until the silence wrapped its fingers around the moment like a warning. Seems I'm not family, I said. Not loud, not soft, just clear. 12 heads turned. Vivian blinked. Odessa's smile twitched. Callum's shoulder tensed. That was the line they didn't rehearse for. No one reached for me. No one stood. No one said my name. I turned and walked away. As I passed the servers, one of them nodded at me, not in pity, but in recognition. And somehow, that was the kindest thing anyone had offered me all night. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I just walked into the elevator, alone, in the dress I'd paid for a dinner I wasn't meant to attend. And when the doors closed, I let the quiet swallow me whole. Seems I'm not family, I said, steady as the silverware I'd handpicked for a seat I was never meant to fill. I didn't cry when I left the rooftop, but I didn't sleep either. My suite at the Grand Palazzo was as immaculate as I'd designed it to be. Elegant crown molding, floor-to-ceiling views of Florence, a king bed made with military precision. And yet, it felt like a cage. I stood at the edge of the balcony, watching the Arno stretch into the distance, glowing under the Tuscan moonlight. In my head, I wasn't seeing rivers or bridges. I was replaying the way Odessa had said, "Maybe you're tired, sweetheart." That's the kind of thing you say when you've already decided someone doesn't belong. I pulled out my tablet, opened the itinerary, checked every line. My name was listed across every page, initials marked on vendor contracts, emails from my staff cross-referenced. Every ounce of this tour had my fingerprints on it. Yet somehow, I was invisible. The next morning, a thin envelope was slid under my door. Gold-trimmed, cream cardstock, the press itinerary. I didn't remember requesting it. Inside was the agenda for the week's media events. Interviews, photo shoots, the scheduled press walk at the gala entrance. My name wasn't on it, not even in the credits as event producer. Vivian's name was, though. Twice. Once as Odessa's legacy partner, and again as brand liaison. I called Marco, my publicist, without hesitation. He answered on the third ring, his voice brittle. "Diana, hey, look, I thought..." He paused. "Odessa said you weren't interested in the press portion, that you'd prefer to stay behind the scenes this time." "She said that?" "That's what I was told. I assumed you signed off. She said you were feeling overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. That was a new one. Last month, she called me controlling during a vendor call. Last year, it was too ambitious for someone without a PR background. I didn't raise my voice, didn't defend. I just thanked him and hung up. Later that afternoon, I walked into the conference suite to review lighting for the birthday tribute. Vivienne was already at the podium, trying out angles in front of a small AV crew. She looked radiant, perfect waves, lipstick that matched her blazer, hands moving like she belonged there. I stepped closer and asked the coordinator where the speaking notes were. He handed me a folder labeled Vivienne Keynote. Odessa walked in just as I opened it. "Oh, Diana," she smiled, like this was all perfectly reasonable. "I thought we talked about this. Vivienne's taking the toast this year. She's got a fresh voice, something that connects with the younger generation. You know how the press loves that." I don't remember nodding, but I must have. That's what people like her count on, you freezing just long enough for them to move on. I excused myself and went back to my suite, where I opened the bottom drawer of my luggage and pulled out the leather-bound journal I hadn't touched in months. On a blank page, I wrote, "They don't just want me gone, they want me forgotten." Then I underlined it. A memory crept up before I could push it down. I was 8. Odessa had helped organize a holiday recital at my school. I was assigned the opening monologue, a silly but sweet poem about snowflakes and winter wishes. The night before the show, she took me aside and said, "I moved your part to Jenny. You're strong enough to handle disappointment. She isn't." I'd smiled. I always did. That's what good daughters do. Until they don't. I stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "You're not 8 anymore." And I meant it. The game had changed, but the players hadn't. Odessa still pulled the strings. Vivienne was happy to dance. Callum stayed just detached enough to keep his conscience intact. But me? I was done waiting for a seat. If they were rewriting the family narrative, they'd soon remember. I was the one holding the pen. I stayed quiet, but I didn't disappear. That evening, I arrived at the hotel ballroom earlier than scheduled. The chandeliers had just been lit, and the scent of polished marble still clung to the air. Tech crews were adjusting spotlights. The AV table was a mess of cables, screens, and someone's half-eaten biscotti. I moved through the room like I belonged there. Because I did. Because I built this. Every fabric choice, every lighting cue, every inch of ambiance had my signature beneath it, even if no one could see it. Marco spotted me and gave a quick nod. "We're loading the final tribute video. Want to preview?" I answered with a short, "Yes," and folded my arms. My posture said professional detachment. My heart said watch carefully. The screen flickered to life. The first images were old footage. Super 8 home movies Odessa used to have transferred years ago. There I was, age 6, clinging to her skirt during a museum gala. Then on a pony at a family ranch event. School photos, birthday cake moments. My throat tightened, not because of nostalgia, because I could feel what was coming. And I was right. By the halfway point, I vanished. The rest of the montage was Odessa's recent triumphs, awards, interviews, photo shoots, and in every public frame beside her, Vivienne, shaking hands with charity partners, laughing backstage with Odessa, accepting flowers at a fashion event. My mother's voiceover played like a eulogy to herself. I've always believed legacy is about who stands beside you, not just where you've been, but who you trust to carry the light forward. I didn't blink, not once. Instead, I turned to the AV tech and said, "Can I see the cue sheet for the slideshow?" He handed it to me. A laminated checklist, color-coded. Segment 1, Odessa, Early Vision. Segment 2, Odessa plus Protégé. Segment 3, Odessa Legacy Speech, Vivienne, Live. There was no Segment 4, no mention of me, not even as a producer, not even as background. This wasn't a tribute, this was a transfer of power. I took a photo of the cue sheet with my phone. 2 angles, no flash. "You okay?" Marco asked, his voice trying to be casual. "I'm great," I replied, just confirming we're on schedule. He gave me a look, the kind people give when they know something's off, but don't want to be the one to name it. Then he turned back to the monitors. My steps were slow as I left the ballroom, not because I was tired, because I was calculating. Back in my suite, I opened the archive folder on my tablet, where I kept documentation from every major event I'd ever designed. I uploaded the photo of the cue sheet, labeled it Odessa Tribute Erasure Proof. It wasn't for revenge, it was for memory, for the record, for the next time someone asked, "Are you sure this wasn't just a mistake?" Because it never was. A knock on the door broke the silence. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything, but the staff smiled and handed me a covered tray. Beneath the lid, one espresso, one handwritten card. Vivienne's handwriting. "She's earned this. Please don't make it about you. V." I laughed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't bitter, it was just tired. Because this is what happens when people are trying to replace you. They don't fight you directly, they fade you out, gradually, softly, so that when you're gone, no one notices you left. The next morning, I remembered something I hadn't thought of in years. My first solo feature in Chicago Celebrates magazine. I was 26. I'd landed the piece on merit. No name dropping, no strings pulled. I was so proud I printed a high-gloss copy, framed it, and mailed it to Odessa with a note that said, "In case you want to add it to your office." She never replied. Years later, while helping her assistant move boxes into a storage unit, I found it. Still wrapped in brown paper. Never opened. She'd labeled it, "Miscellaneous Press, Diana Miscellaneous." I returned to the present with that memory still hanging on me like smoke. Vivienne had a section, a title, a platform, and I had a drawer in a dusty closet no one opened. But here's the thing about closets. They don't stay closed forever. I wrote a new note to myself in my journal. If they were trying to delete me quietly, I would make my return loudly. You can't erase someone who built the foundation under your feet. I repeated that sentence like a mantra as I stepped out of the elevator, heading back to my room. But the second the door slid open, I froze. Callum and Vivienne were standing directly outside my door, laughing about something, wine glasses in hand. Her fingers trailed lazily down his sleeve. His back was turned toward me, but hers wasn't. She saw me immediately, smiled. "Long day?" she asked, her tone sweet like syrup poured over something spoiled. I didn't answer, just slipped past them, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. As the latch clicked shut behind me, I stood there a full minute. No breath, no thought, just stillness so tight it hurt. That placement wasn't coincidence. The next morning, I made my way down to the concierge. I asked, as calmly as I could, if a room change might be possible. Something a little more removed. The young woman at the desk hesitated, typing quickly, then smiled that practiced hospitality smile. "I'm afraid that might be difficult, Ms. Halden. Mrs. Halden requested all family suites be kept close together for unity. It's part of the VIP coordination list." I nodded slowly. Of course she did. It wasn't just the room beside mine. To my right were two other doors, Odessa's personal glam team, the press liaison suite. I was surrounded, like a buffer or a wall. That night, after confirming final logistics with the restaurant, I returned to find the hallway dim and too quiet. I stepped into my room and immediately heard them. Muffled laughter, clinking glass. A chair scraped tile just on the other side of the wall. I tried turning on white noise. It helped, but didn't erase the sound of Vivienne's voice rising in mock surprise. Callum's chuckle answering back. I didn't miss the marriage. I missed the version of myself who still believed it had been real. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling. Odessa had once said, "Marriage is about strategy, not sentiment. You learn that if you want to survive." I was 22 when she said it, 1 month before our engagement party. I thought she was being cynical. Now I think she was being honest. The next morning, I opened my door to head down to breakfast. As I did, I noticed a crisp envelope resting against Vivienne's door. I picked it up out of instinct, then saw the label stamped in gold. Dinner with Odessa, inner circle only. No envelope had come to me. I turned it over slowly. Vivian's name was on the seal. Just then, her door opened. "Oops! Didn't mean to eavesdrop," she said, taking the envelope from my hand without hesitation. "It's just a small thing. Really more for people who understand where the legacy's heading." I stared at her for a beat too long. She didn't blink. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I turned away, walked down the hall, and ordered a black coffee so bitter it made my teeth sting. Then I returned to my room, opened my laptop, and began reviewing the event's legal paperwork, not for changes, for leverage. Because this wasn't just about speeches and seating charts anymore. They were trying to build something new without me. Pretend I was never the one who taught them how to throw a gala, how to win a crowd, how to make a legacy shine. But I've been behind the scenes long enough to know there's no spotlight without someone managing the electricity. I wrote a new line in my journal, underlined twice. They think they're winning because I'm quiet. But I've been planning events for decades. The biggest scenes happen behind the curtains. They put me next to the mess they made, maybe so I'd watch it burn. But I've lit enough stages to know exactly when to cut the lights. I was up before sunrise. The city hadn't stirred yet, but I had. I slipped into the conference suite where the final printouts were being assembled. Event brochures, media kits, name placards, sponsor packets. Everything looked polished, flawless, expensive. Except for one thing. My name wasn't anywhere. Not under executive event producer, not in the team acknowledgements, not even in the back credits where they usually thank the florist and transportation vendor. It was like I never touched the event, and I had touched everything. I didn't say a word. I took one of the brochures and tucked it under my arm, like a case file. 10 minutes later, I was back in my suite when my phone dinged with an incoming email. Subject line: updated visuals, confirm ASAP. It had come from Odessa's assistant, but what caught my eye was that I'd been CC'd, accidentally. I opened the thread, scrolled, and there it was. Odessa's message, sent 4 days ago. "Let's keep Diana out of the promotional visuals. It confuses the brand hierarchy. Focus on Vivian. She's the right tone for press optics." Beneath it, a reply from the hotel's PR coordinator. "Understood. Vivian will be positioned as the primary contact moving forward. No stutter, no caveats. Just clean removal. Like cutting a name from a seating chart." I stared at the screen. My fingers didn't tremble. I didn't swear or shout or even blink. Instead, I hit reply all, typed, "Thanks for the update. I'll be reviewing all visual and legal placements moving forward." No exclamation mark, no smiley, just a period, a full stop. Because the most powerful thing you can say to someone who's pretending not to notice you is, "I see you." Within 5 minutes, I had 3 missed calls from the assistant, 2 from Odessa's number. I didn't answer. I took my time, got dressed, ate breakfast. Then, around 10 a.m., I stepped out onto the rooftop viewing deck, where I knew she'd be. She was standing alone, staring out at the skyline like a matriarch surveying her empire. "Darling," she greeted me, with that smooth, effortless charm she wore like perfume. "You've been so quiet. I hope you're not letting the press visuals get under your skin. It's just optics, not affection." I walked up beside her. Let the pause stretch until it turned uncomfortable. "You don't get to call it affection when you're deleting me," I said. She turned to look at me. There was a flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or the realization that I wasn't here to be soothed. "I'm not trying to delete you," she replied. "I'm trying to preserve momentum. She connects faster, younger demographic. The press listens to her." I gave a small, tired laugh. "You mean she doesn't remind them of you? I do." Her silence answered me more than any defense could have. For years, I kept thinking I was climbing a ladder toward my mother's approval. But now, standing there beside her, I realized it had never been a ladder. It was a treadmill, and she'd been controlling the speed the whole time. I stepped back. "You built this story, Mother. I said softly. Just don't be surprised when it stops going your way. I walked away without another word. Later that afternoon, I was in the hotel's business center, printer humming beside me, confirmation emails open on the screen, copies of contracts, invoices, deposit receipts. My company had fronted more than half the trip. Every arrangement carried my name. I filed every document into a secure drive, marked it, contingency plan, Halden events. Because if they wanted a legacy without me, they'd build it without my support. If erasing me was part of their legacy plan, then they shouldn't have built it on my signature. I closed the last contract folder, locked the door to the hotel's private meeting room, and opened my laptop with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The screen lit up, and so did my purpose. Every vendor was listed neatly in the event itinerary spreadsheet, color-coded, cross-referenced, designed by me. Every payment confirmation was tied to Halden events. Every contact had my signature. They could cut me from the stage, but they forgot one thing. This production existed because I built it, and I could unbuild it. One by one, I began. First, the vineyard in Tuscany. I called the manager directly. He greeted me by name, warm and professional. I thanked him for the impeccable service and informed him the Caldwell Group would no longer require the space. I arranged for the full deposit to be refunded to my business account. Second, the yacht in Capri. The reservation for the private sunset cruise? Cancelled. The deposit was already scheduled to hit my account in the morning. Third, the villa, gone. Fourth, the Vatican's private art tour. I emailed the cultural liaison and explained there had been a change in itinerary. She responded within minutes, apologizing for any inconvenience and confirming the cancellation. Every call was clean, every message polite, professional detachment wrapped in silk. By the time I logged off, the fallout had already begun. The emails would start trickling in by evening. Confused assistants, nervous planners, and eventually, Odessa herself. But I was done with explanations. They erased me from the credits, so I removed them from the experience. Later that evening, I slipped into the hotel's bar to order mint tea, needing something warm and grounding. I hadn't even taken a sip when I heard it. "That's got a sting, huh?" I looked to my left. Vivienne, perched on a velvet stool, swirling a glass of wine with one hand, her posture loose, smile sloppy. She was tipsy, just enough to lose her filter. She took another sip, leaned in like we were old girlfriends. "Odessa said I'd be her public face going forward," she whispered, voice sticky with pride. "The whole legacy thing, the gala, the press. It's kind of poetic, right? You set the table. I just get to sit at the head of it." I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I didn't respond. She smiled like she'd won something, and that told me everything I needed to know. I left her there, in her little moment of imagined victory, and returned to my room. No tears, no speeches, just a pen in my hand and a journal half full of clarity. "This isn't revenge," I wrote. "This is release." Then I drafted a short internal memo to my legal team at Halden Events. Effective immediately, place all current and future Caldwell-related engagements under legal review. No services are to be rendered without written reapproval. I hit send. Then I stood, walked to the window, and watched the lights of Florence begin to glow against the dusky sky. It was almost time. I opened the garment bag and pulled out the navy velvet gown I'd brought for the gala. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't designed to be noticed, but it fit like armor. I dressed with precision, no panic, no shaking hands. Then I picked up my phone and called Marco, the maitre d' at the rooftop restaurant. "Hi, Marco, it's Diana Halden," I said calmly. "Can I stop by for 5 minutes before tonight's event begins? I'd like to confirm a small change in logistics." "Of course, Ms. Halden," he said, warm and eager. "Anything you need." As I hung up, I glanced at myself in the mirror. Not the version they'd tried to erase, not the girl begging for a chair, but the woman who designed the entire damn table. They planned to humiliate me publicly, so I made sure the fallout would be just as visible. From the quiet shadows near the kitchen alcove, I watched the show unfold exactly as they rehearsed it. Candle-lit tables, designer gowns, champagne flutes raised high. Odessa stood center stage, resplendent in emerald silk, a forced youthfulness clinging to her posture. The applause rained over her like confetti. Vivian sat at her right hand, smiling with the soft humility of someone who knew they were being handed something they hadn't earned. She leaned in as Odessa spoke, nodded on cue, laughed when prompted, like a well-trained echo. My name wasn't on the guest list, not even as a footnote, but I was here, watching every moment, every speech, every lie served on a silver tray. Marco glanced at me from the corner. I gave him the slightest nod. As dessert arrived, a towering millefoglie Odessa insisted be flown in from Milan. Marco approached the table. He leaned down and murmured something into her ear. I saw her blink, then frown. She waved him off. Marco stepped back, respectfully persistent. This time he spoke a little louder, just enough for a few heads to turn. I'm sorry, Mrs. Halden, but we'll need a new form of payment to continue service. The previous guarantee has been revoked. Odessa gave a brittle laugh. That's absurd. Use the corporate card. We tried. It declined. The room shifted. Laughter paused. Forks clinked against china. Odessa's face drained of color, just slightly, but enough for those who knew her to notice. She reached for her purse, realized she didn't have it. Richard, one of her board allies, leaned in. Is there a problem, Odessa? I watched the edges of her world begin to fray. And I said nothing. I slipped out before the entire structure buckled under the weight of its own arrogance. There was no need for me to stay. The next morning, it began. My phone buzzed before I finished my espresso. Don't panic, my PR consultant said, voice clipped and fast. Odessa's team is trying to control the damage. They're feeding a story to a few blogs. What kind of story? She sighed. That you snapped. Emotional distress. Overstepped. There's already a headline. Event planner snaps at mother's gala. I didn't answer right away. I just closed my eyes and let the silence wrap around me like armor. They're spinning it hard, Diana. You need to respond before it gets traction. I didn't. Not yet. An hour later, a friend from New York sent me a screenshot. An anonymous quote, conveniently timed, published in a society column. It's hard watching someone unravel, especially when they used to be so promising. Attributed, of course, to a source close to the family. I stared at it. Read it twice. Then I opened my voice memo app and hit record. My name is Diana Halden, I said quietly. And I'm not unraveling, I'm remembering. Later that afternoon, I met with someone who owed me a favor. A journalist. Quiet, principled, tired of being told to keep things pretty. I laid it all out. Emails, vendor contracts, payment records, timestamps. I didn't ask for a hit piece. I don't want drama, I told him. I want clarity. And I want the truth to be louder than the myth she's trying to sell. He nodded. You're not the first person Odessa tried to rewrite. That night, I slept with my phone face down. No alerts, no noise. Let them scramble. Let them spin. They wanted to break me in public, so I handed them the spotlight and let the truth echo. By the time I opened my eyes, the sun had already claimed half the room. My phone was glowing with missed calls, unread messages, and one lone voicemail from Odessa. I pressed play, letting her voice float through the stillness. This is embarrassing, Diana. Please stop. No apology, just control disguised as concern. The kind of message you leave when you're more worried about what people think than what you did. I didn't call back. Instead, I sat at the small desk by the window, sipped coffee, and reread the statement I'd written weeks ago, the one I had never intended to use. Until now. At noon, Odessa announced a reconciliation brunch in the hotel's conference lounge. A curated list of guests, select press, just enough velvet and glass to make it look like diplomacy instead of damage control. I wasn't invited, but I walked in anyway. The moment the door opened, forks paused mid-air. Conversations clipped off like a power outage. Odessa turned in her seat, lips tight, hands folded with intentional calm. Vivian blinked. Callum looked down at his plate. I didn't rush. I crossed the room slowly, heels echoing louder than anyone's voice. A folder rested under my arm. I stopped beside Odessa's table, set the folder down with a soft thud. You all deserve to know what really happened. Odessa stood. Diana, this isn't the time. It never is, according to you, but I'm done asking. I opened the folder. Page by page, screenshots, invoices, bank transactions, emails, each one printed in crisp black ink, each one tracing the erasure, subtle, deliberate, strategic. This, I said, holding up the copy of her email to the press team, is how you remove someone without saying their name. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just read. This is what erasure looks like when power fears accountability. And this, I lifted the last page, a vendor cancellation confirmation, is what consequence looks like when someone finally says no. Silence. Odessa tried to smile, but her voice wavered. We're family, Diana. You're blowing this out of proportion. Are we? I tilted my head. Then why was I never allowed to speak without being edited? A few guests exchanged glances. One journalist quietly tapped record on their phone. Callum stood and left the room. Vivian paled, but stayed seated. Odessa's expression cracked. Not rage, not regret. Just something brittle breaking beneath the surface. I closed the folder. I don't need a seat anymore, I said. I brought my own table. And I don't need an apology. Just distance. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. You can keep the spotlight. I'll keep my name. And I walked out. No applause, no cameras. Just a hallway echoing with the sound of my heels, and a future I wasn't afraid to walk into. Some stories don't need a sequel. Just a clean ending, signed in your own handwriting. I left Florence without fanfare. No dramatic exit through the lobby. No teary glances back at the hotel facade. Just a silent, one-way ride to the airport, my luggage packed with dignity instead of souvenirs. At the Alitalia counter, I upgraded to first class using points my business had earned over a decade of flawless events. No guilt, no hesitation. From the plane window, the city unfolded below. Rooftops like patchwork, history baked into stone and sun. But I didn't feel nostalgic. I felt free. I didn't check my phone. Not because I was avoiding the chaos, because I already knew how it ended. The moment I stepped into my apartment back in Chicago, I noticed the difference. Not in the furniture or the air, but in myself. The old version of me would have unpacked and organized within an hour. This time, I let my suitcase sit. I made tea, turned on Miles Davis, and watched the rain dance across the windows. Peace doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it just stops asking for permission. A few days later, emails started trickling in from vendors across Europe. Odessa's team hasn't responded to balance requests. We were told you weren't involved anymore. That seems to be incorrect. Another wrote simply, no one wants to guarantee her events now. Too much drama, too little honor. I said nothing, just archived the messages and moved on. Then, an envelope arrived. Handwritten, no return address. Inside, a short note. I regret how this was handled. You are stronger than I gave you credit for. No love, no mom, just Odessa. It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get. I didn't frame it, didn't burn it. I tucked it into the back of my journal, where unfinished things go. A week later, gossip sites lit up with a blog post from an anonymous industry insider. They used me, told me to smile, wear her colors, speak her script. I wasn't her daughter, I was just convenient. Everyone assumed it was Vivian. She denied it publicly, but disappeared from Odessa's events afterward. Quietly, completely. Some legacies crumble with scandal. Others just fade. 6 months passed. I found myself standing on a sunlit terrace in Positano, clipboard in hand, finalizing florals for a celebrity's daughter's wedding. The air smelled of sea salt and lemon trees. The laughter behind me was real. A junior planner leaned close and whispered, "You're the woman who walked away from that family in Florence, right?" I didn't answer, just smiled. Some names you earn, some names you reclaim. Later that night, I opened my journal. The first entry, once filled with confusion and fear, now had a new line beneath it. They tried to unname me. I renamed myself. Healing isn't about forgiveness. It's about not waiting to be forgiven. It's the power to rewrite your own ending, without permission, without applause, just the sound of your own pen on paper. You can rebuild your legacy, but only if you're brave enough to walk away from the one that broke you. Before I go, let me leave you with this. I used to think family loyalty meant staying quiet, enduring, playing the role someone else wrote for you just to keep the peace. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Peace that cost you your identity isn't peace, it's erasure. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from a place you were expected to shrink and grow somewhere else on your own terms. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been made to feel like your presence was optional, let this be your reminder. You don't have to stay where you're not seen. You are allowed to redraw your boundaries. You are allowed to reclaim your name. You are allowed to start over, no matter how late in the story. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to step away from people you loved in order to finally love yourself? Do you think forgiveness always needs to be spoken, or can it live quietly in your decision to move on? Let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if this story touched something in you, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't speak to you, that's okay too. Tell me why. I read every comment. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real, raw, human, don't forget to subscribe. There's always another chapter, and you might just see yourself in the next one. Thank you for being here.